morning. Oh boy. Good morning.
Morning.
There we go. And then there's Scott. How's everyone doing? You were nice and chatty, so I know you're nice and awake. It's nice to see some faces I haven't seen in a little while. Scott and I were just chatting. It's going to be interesting when the mask mandate drops and some of you start to show your face again. Like, I haven't seen your face in a while. So, I mean, you guys have seen mine, so you know how it looks, and it's not going to be a shock. But some of you, we haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know. We're not sure what we're looking at anymore, right? Like, it could be a little bit of a shock. I don't know. But we're going to be excited to see your smiling faces, that's for sure. So welcome at home, welcome here. Why don't you stand, and let's open up in some worship together. I give you my life, I give you my trust, Jesus, and you are my God, and you are enough, Jesus, Jesus, my heart is yours. My heart is yours, my heart is yours. Take it all, my life in your hands. My heart is yours, my heart is yours. Take it all, my life in your hands. Sing it out. I lay down my life. I lay down my life. I take up my cross. And Jesus, 'cause you are my God, whatever the cost. Jesus, Jesus, my heart, and my heart is yours, my heart is yours. Take it all, my life in your hands. And my heart is yours, my heart is yours. Take it all, my life in your hands. And all to Jesus, and all to Jesus I surrender, and all to you I freely give. No, I will ever love and trust you, and in your presence I will live. And all to Jesus I surrender, and all to you I freely give. No, I will ever love and trust you, and in your presence I will live. My heart is yours, my heart is yours. And take it all, my life in your hands. And my heart is yours, my heart is yours. And take it all, my life in your hands. My heart is yours, my heart is yours. And take it all, my life in your hands. My heart is yours, my heart is yours. And take it all, my life in your hands, and take it all, my life in your hands. The splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, let all the earth rejoice. And he wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. And how great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Age to age he stands, and time is in his hands, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. And the Godhead, three in one, Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. And how great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God. Sing it out, name above all names, the name above all names. You are worthy of all praise, and my heart will sing how great is our God. The name above all names, you are worthy of all praise, and my heart will sing how great is our God. One more time, name above. The name above all names, you are worthy of all praise, and my heart will sing how great is our God. Sing it out, how great, and how great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God. One more time, how great, and how great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. God. And all will see how great is our God. Amen. This is my desire to honor you, Lord, with all my heart I worship you. And all I have within me, I give you praise. And all that I adore is in you. 'Cause Lord, I give you my heart, I give you my soul, and I live for you alone. And every breath that I take, and every moment I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. This is my desire to honor you, Lord, with all my heart I worship you. And all I have within me, I give you praise. And all that I adore is in you. Lord, I give you my heart, I give you my soul, and I live for you alone. And every breath that I take, and every moment I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. And Lord, I give you my heart, I give you my soul, and I live for you alone. And every breath that I take, and every moment I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. And every breath that I take, and every moment I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. 'Cause this is the air I breathe. Your holy presence This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. This is the air I breathe.
This is the air I breathe.
This is the air I breathe.
The air I breathe.
Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread.
My daily bread.
This is my daily bread.
My daily bread.
Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. And I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. One more time. And I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. Sing, this is the air. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. Amen. You can grab a seat.
these sheets of calendar. If not, there are more on the back table there. And we're going to be talking about the condition of the heart. Last week we talked about a gentle spirit, and we'd like to welcome our online crew. If you're listening to this message first, you probably want to go back and listen to last week's first. And what we're doing is a series called The Rest of Us. And what it's about is these last 2 years we've really focused on our health. And that's kind of been the dominant theme in our society. And the truth of the matter is you're made up of more than your health. And so we want to take 4 weeks, and we're going to go through the conditions of various parts of who we are. We're going to talk about your spirit, your heart, your mind, and your body. And we'll talk about getting those aligned again with God's purposes. And so we hope you enjoy this series. And this takes your mind off what we've just been through and gives you hope for the future and things. And so when you see this calendar, what you're going to do this service or this week is you're going to listen to little tidbits of what we're going to recommend. We're going to go through the refrain, reframe, retrain, and we'll talk a little bit about that as far as the condition of our hearts. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at your schedule. I don't know what your schedule is, and you're going to look at it and go, okay, where during the week does my heart go the wrong way? Where do I struggle? Is it when I go to work? Is it when I get up? Is it when I take my kids, to swimming or something? Where affects my heart? And then where is my heart highest and most powerful? And then look at your schedule and go, okay, this week I'm going to schedule this week in order to condition myself to have a good heart. I want my heart to be stronger next week than it is this week. And so you may take some of the advice I give you today and you can pencil it in there and make a plan for your week and allow God to saturate your schedule. And then we'll talk a little bit more of that. So I want to jump right in by making 5 declarative statements. And these statements, we're going to be talking about what does your heart do? Because I believe in today's world, we hear about our heart all the time. We hear about having a broken heart, or someone having a good heart, or a poisoned heart, or, someone's listening to their heart. I always wince a little bit when I see in media where they take people and they go, I don't know what to do. Oh, listen to your heart. I always wince a little when people say that because the truth of the matter is your heart isn't a wellspring of good decisions if it's not invested in the proper way. All right? And so the heart is isn't something that you depend on. The heart is something you protect, cultivate, train, and instill good stuff in there. So here's my declarative statements. I say that right. The first one is this: your heart is not the source of knowledge or wisdom. It is an echo chamber of what you feed it. And so how you condition your heart is absolutely crucial for what your heart is going to do for you. It's like an investment bank. You have to make investments in your heart in order for your heart to be effective and in order for it to benefit you. So that's the first statement. The second: listening to your heart or following your heart is only useful if your heart is full of godly wisdom. Otherwise, following its desires is a dangerous trap that will eventually destroy you. I'm going to repeat that again. Listening to your heart or following your heart is only useful if your heart is full of godly wisdom. Otherwise, following its desires is a dangerous trap that will eventually destroy you. Third statement: the heart needs to be protected, especially when you are young. It must be fed a healthy diet of scripture, wisdom, and integrity. And there seems to be a narrative I see come up a lot of times in movies and shows. The narrative is this: is the older people are, the more stupid and out of touch they are. And that the wisest, most virtuous people are teenagers or children. And that they often know what things really are, but anybody kind of over 25 is dumb and needs to be educated or changed and out of touch. And a lot of times these young people will say, I just know in my heart this is, what I need to do, or listen to your heart. And in reality, scripturally, it's backwards. When we're young, is when the instructor in the book of Proverbs and in the scriptures where it says, when you're young, be a really good listener. When you're young, absorb wisdom. When you're young, you have no clue what your heart is supposed to be like. And it's at that point in your life where you depend on those who are older or wiser in God, and you depend on God and His Word in order to train your heart so that when you make decisions, you make them with the right frame of heart and mind. You know, what our society does is it takes our young and it trains them to be activists and trains them to want to make major, huge decisions and changes in our world when many of us, when we're young, don't even know how to make our bed. You hear that? Most of the time, we're training our young people to make huge, cataclysmic effects on society with complex issues they have no idea about when they don't even know how to make their bed. Okay? And I'm not down on young people. I remember being that sharp and when I was young and all that. But when I was young, there was a lot I didn't know. And so when you're young, especially those of you who are young, learn, listen. You know, you can save yourself in this life so much grief by learning from the mistakes of people who are older than you. I've told this story before, but when I was just a kid at that point, my sister Kim was kind of a wild child. And Kim went to a concert in downtown Toronto, and then she thought it was a good idea traveling on Lakeshore on the way back to sit on the hood of the car while the car was traveling. And it stopped suddenly. She went off and rolled in the gravel, and she got road rash from head to toe. And I remember, she lay on her couch for a couple of weeks, and she was, full of scabs and sore and could barely move. And, they were trying to take, stones out of the wounds. It was just horrible. And I remember sitting there going, you know what? Rebelling isn't always a good idea. I don't know if I ever want to experience what she just experienced, right? You want to go through life and make good decisions, learn from the mistakes of those who went before you. Before you go to do something or you make a decision, the greatest lie you can listen to is, it happens to most people, but it won't happen to me. And so if you're interested in investing going forward, there's wisdom out there for you. There is good, godly wisdom. Avail yourself of it. The heart needs to be protected. Number 4, in order to have a good heart, you must feed it a healthy, good diet over an extended period of time. You should never stop feeding your heart. You should never stop protecting your heart. You should never stop cultivating your heart in the direction that it should go. It is a lifetime learning. And myself, as a young middle-aged man, I'm still learning about the condition and still absorbing lessons for my heart. I'm curious and I'm learning. And probably the greatest thing you could ever do is just to humble yourself and say, I don't know what I don't know. I've been pastoring this church now for 22 years, right? And one of my aha moments this last year is, okay, all the stuff I've been doing, I can't keep doing it expecting different results every time. What can I learn? And so I'm actually going around to different churches and learning from different people, and I've had to become a student of what I do, even though I've been doing it a long time. I've become a student of what I'm doing. What does the heart do? What does it do? What is your heart? The unhealthy heart is a cesspool of unrestrained passion, narcissistic impulses, and destructive tendencies. That's the condition of an unhealthy heart. It destroys intimacy. It breaks relationship. And it deeply despises God. An upside-down world where good is bad and bad is good is a prime real estate of a bad heart. And the highest compliment I ever pay anybody or I have directed to me is, you have a good heart. And you know people that are in your life that have a good heart. They have this gentleness, this perspective. They are people with whom you can let your guard down and you can talk to them. A good heart is an absolutely powerful apart because it's the center of who you are. And our hearts are not hidden from God. God knows everything about your heart. And he wants you to grow and cultivate a healthy heart. Way back in the Old Testament, there was a time where Samuel, he was a judge, and he was someone that God used to anoint kings. And he had anointed one king, and he had a good run for a little while, and then turned out to, start to make some bad decisions, and his heart became corrupted. His name was Saul. And so God told Samuel, okay, we're going to go find another king. I want you to go, and I want you to anoint one of the sons of this man named Jesse, who lives near Bethlehem. And so Samuel travels, which is a kind of risky thing to do when they have a king, to go and anoint his replacement, at the same time the guy's alive. But God never asks us not to be gutsy, right? And it says that as he arrived and Jesse's sons started to come out, he saw the first son, Eliab. And Eliab was tall and good looking. And the passage says in 1 Samuel 16, when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And so when God sees you, he sees the condition of your heart. So what do we do? Well, let's go back to the passage that I had come up ahead of time. In Proverbs 4, it says, listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention and gain understanding. I give you sound learning, so do not forsake my teaching. For I too was a son to my father, still tender and cherished by my mother. The beginning of an effective education is a moral choice. It's a dedication to wisdom and an understanding of how life should be lived. These are the path to greatness. What am I saying there? He takes this passage, and he's probably taken a young boy, probably 12 or 13 years old. And he's saying, look, I was once where you are. And if you want to get where you're going in life the best way, then listen to what I have to say to you. You have to train. You have to dedicate yourself to it. So there's a goal in mind. And there is an objective when it comes to our hearts. A lot of times we just leave our hearts, and don't think much about what's happening in them or what's going on there. But just like in the book of Proverbs, as Solomon was sharing with his sons, and to be honest with you, Solomon's sons didn't really take his advice very well. But he can remember David instructing him, and he learned so much from him about the condition of the heart. Proverbs 4 goes on to say, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. A healthy heart brings clarity. When we learn to cultivate our heart, what it does is it cleans up our life. I don't know if you ever thought of, your mind's cluttered. You kind of get up in the day and you kind of don't know what direction you're going, and small things set you off. And you feel like your life isn't making a difference, but at the same time, everything has demands on you, and you feel hurried and rushed and upset and out of control. When you have a prioritized heart, or a heart that yearns after God, a lot of clarification comes. It's not that the busyness of life doesn't happen, but you know what you're about. Probably one of the best things you could do is sit down and make a list of who you are not. Right? Make a list of who you are not. How many things do others expect of you necessarily, or kind of want you to be, that you're trying to be, that you're absolutely no good at? What am I not good at? Well, a clear heart in the Lord means that there's this prioritization. I remember years ago, I mentioned this last week, I did a series called Jesus Interrupted. Because if you look at the path of Jesus' ministry, he constantly had people who were coming and demanding his time that were interruptions to him while he was going about different things. Yet, you see in his ministry this purpose and this clarity of what he was supposed to do. And he never, leaves that path. He is forever on that path in his obedience to God and his ministry until he reached the cross. In fact, there's passages that say he resolutely set his face to do that. There's a clarity that comes when we live for God. And it's this clarity that helps us know that the main things are the main things. There's a lot of busyness and clutter in our lives, but when you have all that happening, it's not that you don't have enough time, it's that you don't have the right priorities. You don't have the right priorities. Because if you have the right priorities, certain things should just bounce right off you. Or should be things that don't distract you. There's a clarity that comes about. I'm watching my son and my daughter-in-law, with our first grandchild, and she's pretty adorable. And we're watching them parent. And the difference between not having kids and having kids is pretty dramatic. Like, it is quite literally life-changing. And both of them have done a great job. Like, they're really good parents. But it's interesting, listening to how their lives have changed and how much about their life before this happened that they kind of go, I had so much free time and I didn't know it. I thought my life was busy, and then this little bundle of joy came along, and all of a sudden, I've got all these distractions, and there's all these things. But they have a purity of purpose. They're putting her first, and because of that, they're caring for her. Well, there's that clarity of purpose in having a good heart. Proverbs 4:20, my son, pay attention to what I have to say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart. For they are life to those who find them, and health to one's whole body. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Jay Stowell, in this quote I had up in the quote show, and I'm going to repeat it. Heart is used in Scripture as the most comprehensive term for the authentic person. It is a part of our being where we desire, deliberate, and decide. It has been described as the place of conscious and decisive spiritual activity, the comprehensive term for a person as a whole, his feelings, desires, passions, thoughts, understanding, and will. The center of a person, the place to which God turns. Our heart is the center of who we are. So you're going, well, how do I guard my heart? Okay, I want to guard my heart. What do I do? Well, you do that by monitoring what you have coming in your heart and what you have to work with that you can give out. All right? A heart that is full of God looks at situations completely different than if my heart is obsessed with me. When my heart is obsessed with me, there's a kind of a narcissism that goes on where I want fulfillment. I want to eat because I'm hungry. I want this because it's suddenly important to me. And I go from thing to thing, trying to fill a hole in my life that can only be filled by God. And so I go from experience to experience, constantly trying to feed the ego that is me. And trying to help myself to be happy and satisfied and full of joy. The problem with is when you seek that kind of happiness, you never quite get there. You have this kind of sweet initial experience, and then it turns sour afterwards. I saw this quote, and I'm going to misquote it this week, but I thought it was really insightful. To follow God's ways is bitter at the outside and grows sweet with time. To follow our own ways is sweet at the outside and grows bitter over time. The heart, investing in and protecting it, means making some decisions about what is going to be your priorities and what is not. And it's going to be looking and going, okay, this week, what am I exposing myself to, whether it's, in media or different relationships or a toxic workplace or something at the home or whatever, that is making my heart, knocking it off and is actually infecting it with poison. And sometimes we go over and over and over. Some people live in this kind of dramatic cycle that they just go over and over and over again, and they have this toxic lifestyle. And they know what's wrong. They'll identify. They'll tell you about it. They'll point it out and everything, but they actually never break it. A follower of Jesus Christ is given the power to break the chain of dysfunction that our past brings into it. We have the ability, through God's power, to break that chain and to take what's toxic and minimize it and to lift up our hearts. And to a place where our hearts become so strong that they can survive all kinds of turmoil. I talked a few weeks about George Chen, who was a pastor who became a political prisoner in China for years and years, and he spent 15 years in jail. And he was a constant irritant to the guards because he was always praising the Lord and singing, and he just had such an upbeat attitude. So they thought, we're going to do this to really discourage him. We're going to give him the job of taking all the leftover waste from the buckets and pouring it into the cesspool. And nobody wanted that job because most often the people that went to do that job got sick because there's all kinds of bad bacteria there. It was a horrible job, and those who had to do this job stank horribly all the time. But George Chen took to his job like it was the best job on earth. And he said he was so thankful because now he could praise God and sing his hymns as loud as he wanted, and nobody would come near him or tell him he could stop. And so he used to sing from the middle of the cesspool, sing hymns to God. That was a man who's, to look at his life, would go, that is not the ideal profession that I didn't want to be involved in. But who had a good heart. And because of his heart, because of the condition of his heart, because he had cultivated his heart and protected it and filled it full of good things, he had a strong, vibrant, godly heart. All through the New Testament, you see people who are persecuted for their faith. And what happens? You put them in prison, they sing. You knock them down, they get up. You try to shut them up, and their voice breaks out somewhere else. It is impossible to keep a good heart down. Why? Because no matter what the circumstances, a strong, godly heart is an incredible source of strength and meaning in a world that doesn't have it. He goes on to say, keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet. And be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or the left. Keep your foot from evil. And so I'm going to take those verses and just break them down into these three applications. Refrain, reframe, and retrain. Okay? What's the first one? Refrain. A lot of cultivation of the heart is stopping doing things that maybe you do that are corrupting your heart. I remember there was one time I was watching this show, and it was like watching a train wreck. It was a real powerful show as well, good actors, all kinds of things. The stuff I really like in a show. But it was very dark. And I remember, about the third time after watching an episode, I was sitting there in kind of a stupor and going, this isn't helping me. It was intriguing, but it was bad for me. It was affecting my heart. It was dragging me down. Often the things that we do that penetrate the heart and have a horrible impact on it is actually what we say. One of the best things we can do is learn to control our own tongues. What do we say? How do we talk? How do we refer to other people? How do we respond? How you talk is probably one of your biggest blind spots. You don't realize how you talk about people, those in authority, those who are close to you, those who are in your family, all those kind of things. And listen, I come from a family with a long line of people that speak without restraint. But he tells us the opposite in this proverb. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. He says in that passage before, he said, pay attention to what I say, turn your ear to my words, do not let them out of your sight. Sorry, next one. Keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk from your lips. Often the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, and the fear of the Lord helps us to listen to what we are saying or think about what we're saying before we say it. I mean, how much turmoil and hurt and pain in this world is caused by someone who lets something out of their mouth that later they wish they could take back? You know, if you look back on your memories of your life, some of the greatest highlights for you are probably people that pointed something out to you and that lifted your heart. You know, I try to remember with John, like this week, John picked perfect songs for this theme, didn't he? Like they were just perfect. They were right on, you know. And often as a pastor, I forget those things or I notice them, but I don't say anything about them. But that is something that I can use my words to encourage and build up and is growing something in John that's valuable and important. Well, it's the same way with our words. We can tear down or lift up. We can discourage or encourage. We can kill or give life. Our words are powerful. And probably the things you remember that bring you the most joy is when someone you cared about said something to you that impacted your soul and made your heart leap. But the opposite is true. Probably the most painful experiences in your life were the words of someone you loved or trusted who said something hurtful or mean. And that stayed in your heart because it broke it. Those are words we say matter. And the beginning of this wisdom, the cultivation of the heart, is controlling what I say. I go on to say in this refrain, I say, what you don't say will inframe and empower what you do say. You know, when you learn to restrain and to control your speech, then when you talk, it has way more power. If you throw words away like disposable things, then words aren't going to mean anything to people. But if you have a good heart, when you say something, people will listen. When you speak, people will trust those words. Jesus said simply, let your yes be yes and your no, no. How do you trust that? Well, if you've got someone who says they're going to do something and they follow through on it and they back it up, after a while you learn to trust that person. But if you ask somebody to do something and they always don't come through, they always fail at a task, you stop trusting them. This isn't rocket science, but it's important. Control how you speak, refrain, and control and cultivate your heart. Taking time to go through the right steps of learning, loving, and living in God's kingdom bring the ultimate satisfaction, intimacy, and meaning. So refrain. Use prudence with your heart. What is going into it that is making it corrupt or is damaging it? Second thing, refrain. He talks about let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. How do you want your life to go? We are so saturated with the immediate that we often forget the urgent or the most important. We're so saturated by the instantaneous and the short-term gratifications we have that often people get to the end of their life and they look back and they go, that's not that great. You can often tell somebody that's lived a very unmeaningful life because they always talk about their life in justification terms. You know, if I just followed through with that, I could have been this. You know, man, I had great hand-eye coordination as a teenager. If I just stuck with baseball, I would have been in the major leagues. Or if this spouse, you know, if they didn't hold me back, I would be here. Or if this didn't happen to me, I would have been able to do so much. Their lives are full of regret and they falsify it with justification because they've wasted their life. But here's good news. God is about fresh starts. He's about starting forward, looking forward. And to refrain things into the condition, you know, what do I want my heart to be like? What do I want people to see and hear when I speak? Well, you don't just get there. You have to reframe it. And a lot of times if you don't reframe it and know where you're going, then you're never going to get there. Right? Let your eyes look straight ahead and fix your gaze directly before you. And then the third thing, retrain. Prudence is the foundation of life to the prudent. By building your life in the scriptures and the life of Jesus Christ, wisdom directs a spirit-filled life focused on the ultimate goal of worshiping God and celebrating his sovereignty in a broken world. Give careful thought to your paths, for your feet, to be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn from the right or the left. Keep your foot from evil. In order to look ahead and in order to cultivate it, what you do is in the now, you train your heart. You train it by the words you speak. You train it by the scriptures you study. You train it from the wisdom you derive from those who have gone ahead of you. 20 years ago when I planted KCC, I remember they said one of the things that was really important is coaching and training. And so I had a couple of coaches, and there was one guy who planted the church a year before me, but he had been a pastor 10 years longer. And I used to just sit down with that guy. We're still in touch. We're still friends. And just go to him and say, look, this is what I'm facing. What can you tell me? You know, there's no way I would still be a pastor today without the wisdom of godly men who went ahead of me and have finished well in ministry. People I look up to because they've been where I have not. And one of the things I love doing is coaching younger pastors. And I've just got a number of them under my wing, and I try to protect them. I know that ministry sometimes can be brutal, but I warn them about things coming up. You know, there's one guy, it's just like he was doing really well, like he was doing all the right stuff, and he was wonderful. And I just was so proud of him. He was just doing great stuff. But I remember we sat down once, and I had an honest talk with him. I said, there'll come a time where you're doing all the right things and your heart's in the right place, and things won't be successful. That happens sometimes in ministry. Sometimes it's a situation beyond your control. Sometimes it's a really good friend who stabs you in the back. And I want you to be prepared for that. And he said, well, how do we prepare? I said, well, it tends to be when I got busy and I was a little more successful in ministry, I started to let things go. I didn't read my Bible. I didn't study as much. You know, I was so busy doing good things, I forgot to cultivate the good in my heart. And I said, and then when disaster happened, I didn't have a strong enough heart to survive the experience. Learn from me. So here's what you can do now to make it so that when you get there, you're prepared. Jesus taught his followers, he said, anyone that takes these words that I speak and builds their life on them is like building your house on a foundation of rock. The winds come and they blow, and they cannot knock that house down. Above all else, guard your heart. Because KCC, we're like restarting again. This is like a brand new church. For 2 years, things have been quiet and all kinds of things have happened and the world's gone crazy. And we got a chance at a fresh start. And going forward, what KCC needs are people who are going to yearn for a good, godly heart. People who are good. And when people come to church, they look to encourage others. They see church as a ministry, not a place they go and absorb. They look for ways to support and give and build up the church. And they're crazy about the idea that someone that doesn't know Jesus might learn about him through what they're doing. That's the kind of heart that we need going forward. We need to have good, pure hearts, strong hearts, capable hearts. We need to be God's people because we can never expect the world to change if we're not going to change first. So, you got the calendar in front of you? Have a look at it and go, all right, what am I doing this week? What's my schedule like? Where during this week does my heart go astray? What are the things that are dragging me away from God's way? And then reframe it. Go, okay, where am I going? Where do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? I want to be like Jesus. He's the end road, right? He's the one you're working towards. Or maybe there's a godly person in your life and you go, when I, hit those senior years, I want to be this person. I want to finish well. I want, people to know that I love them and carry and encourage and lift others up. So reframe it and then retrain yourself. Go, what can I do today that is going to produce that result in the long term? How can I retrain? Is there some way that I talk that I need to stop? And is there a way I should talk that I need to start? You know, they say in our society, for every one encouraging word people say, there are 11 negative things you hear. You know, the chances someone saying something nice to you is 1 out of 12. All the rest of the time, it can be passive aggressive or basically negative. You know what the body of Christ is? They're encouragers. They build each other up. I don't want anyone ever walking out that door that isn't walking 6 feet off the ground. Why? Because when we come together, we should leave this place so full of God and so sure of the family, the body of Christ we're a part of, that we know we are not alone. We know that we are dangerous and powerful and godly, and we have good, strong hearts. That's what God's looking for.